Today, a journey inside the Soviet Union. Making their raft frames from birch poles, the Soviet rafters navigate big rapids as they join American boaters to run 2 rivers in Siberia, an adventure made possible by the new openness inside Russia. The Siberian cowboy is part of the cultural scene in the Altai region, where reindeer farms are common. The area is steeped in a frontier tradition, and archaeological digs are turning up evidence of Mongolian warriors who roamed the Siberian plains 600 years ago. It's a journey into the heart of the Soviet people and the relationships they formed with American athletes as the two overcame barriers of language and culture to triumph as rafters. That's today on Mutual of Omaha's Spirit of Adventure. Years ago, Winston Churchill called the Soviet Union a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. More recently, the promise of glasnost has contributed to a kind of revolutionary candor inside the Soviet Union. Under Gorbachev, superpower tensions have thawed, as witnessed in the most recent summit meeting. In the same spirit, far away from official Moscow, a team of American whitewater rafters were given permission to join their Soviet counterparts. Their goal, to attempt the descent of 2 remote rivers. Siberia, a word that brings to mind frozen plains and endless tracts of wind-blown snow. But this is another Siberia, the Altai Mountain region. Beautiful meadows, green trees, and swift, clear rivers. This is the headwaters of the Katun. It was on this river that Soviet and American rafters began their historic adventure. The Katun River is 3,000 miles southeast of Moscow. As I continued overland, Bob Beatty met up with the rafters as they started their journey.
The spirit of friendship has already started to take place between the two groups. And although there are great cultural differences between the two countries, there certainly is a big difference in the rafts. Right here is one of the U.S. rafts, and here 2 of the Soviet rafts. Now, the Soviet rafts are almost completely made by hand. These rafts were all assembled last night, and it was quite a scene. In the evening light, the Soviets collected birch poles to build frames for their rafts. They had developed the design entirely on their own. They cleverly employ whatever materials they have on hand. In a quite different tradition, the American boaters traced their design origins to the inflatable life rafts that were first used during the pioneer days of the sport in the West. Clearly, the American and Soviet rafts are separate species that have evolved in their own different worlds.
You okay?
As each team continued to work on their boats, the American doctor had a chance to help one of the Soviets named Yura, who had cut himself with an axe while shaving bark off a log. One thing we all noticed right away: the Soviets knew how to be tough. And all of us were emotionally touched by the hospitality at a nearby village.
My name is Janet, my name is Janet, my name is Janet, it's my name. I live in Coxa, I live in Coxa, I live in Coxa, that's where I live.
Underway with more than 150 miles of big water ahead, the Soviet rafters expressed a hope for all of us.
What attracts me in river rafting is not the water, but mainly communication with people, overcoming obstacles.
That first day on the river, I got to know Jib Ellison, recent graduate of Reed College in Oregon, leader of the American team, and the man who first had the inspiration for a joint Soviet-American rafting expedition called Project RAFT.
Project RAFT stands for Russians and Americans for Teamwork.
The primary goal is to put Russians and Americans in the same boat, overcoming common obstacles and learning to work together.
What are some of the problems you've encountered between the Soviet rafters and your rafters? There must be some differences.
Yeah, there are definitely differences. They are primarily what we would call private boaters, which means everyone involved in their group is highly experienced.
Jib, Glenna's got 4 Soviet rafters with her today.
That's the best way to do it. That's what we're all about.
Igor, will you explain? We all will paddle together on forward, and when to back paddle to watch you. Okay?
Glenna Lee, a teacher of outdoor education at Hampshire College in Massachusetts, has been a professional whitewater guide for 7 years. The Katun is the biggest and promises to be the most interesting challenge of her career. Misha Kolshevnikov, a native of Siberia, is the leader of the Soviet team. He has written 3 books on whitewater rafting. One of the goals of the trip was to have the athletes experience each other's approach to rafting. Misha took Suzanne Canja on board that first day.
We communicate in a different way. We both have knowledge of rivers, and I find that we work together well, even though I've never been on this kind of a boat before.
The day was a good shakedown, and the Katun wasted no time bumping the athletes around a bit. Already there was a growing trust between the 2 groups, but the success of the expedition would demand that much of each team member. Earl Alderson from Columbia, Tennessee, got his hands full trying to ride his kayak in a type of wave that boaters call a hole.
It was great, just immediate acceleration out of the eddy, and then just into the big hole for the big slam.
What a way to wake up, getting and dropping in there, getting throbbed. Couldn't find the stabilizing blow-through. Did some window shading, got pinwheeled around a few times. Helmet was gone, rolled up, I was about to cruise back in. I said, I'm not going back in there, no way.
The first day was supposed to be a get-acquainted day, but it turned out to be tough. The river was running at maximum flood level, and so was the adrenaline. The Katun was every bit as big as the Colorado, the king of American whitewater rivers. And the next day, the team would face the giant rapids of the notorious Altai Breach. The rapids of the Altai Breach were just ahead. The team figured they'd better address the language barrier first.
We should learn each other's basic commands, word commands, and then in an emergency situation when you have more than your basic 5 commands going on, work out hand commands.
And I think we have made some progress in this direction because, you know some Russian words, you can speak Russian a bit.
Я сам чувствую, что я немножко больше стал понимать, чем раньше.
And now I feel myself that I can understand more English words than before.
И мне Игорь кажется, что Игорь лучше стал переводить.
The leaders then discussed strategy for the upcoming Altai Breach.
My thinking on safety is to send the 3 kayakers first. Have the other 2 kayakers continue down to the bottom of the rapid. Then my thinking is the plot is the most stable of the rafts. and send it next. Or maybe with the kayakers.
Soviet expedition leader Misha agreed with Jib's plan, so the kayakers made the first run. On a big river, kayakers often function like scouts, sent out in advance. They are more maneuverable than the big boats, and even if they get knocked over, an expert kayaker can almost always roll his boat back up. The kayakers stationed themselves below the rapids, forming a safety net to pick up any rafters who might get knocked out of their boats. Then came the big Soviet float. Suzanne Canja had some impressions.
Us in the United States, we have boats that we go through big rapids and it fills up with water, then we have to empty it out. Whereas here, they just have the frames and it's open. And they've been able to go through harder rapids, what I've done so far in the float. it's really exciting, and it does handle well through the bigger whitewater.
The Soviets' boats are radically different than anything used in the United States for whitewater. They're all homemade. Those guys, even though their boats may not, look as nice as ours or be as professionally crafted, it's obvious that they run just as difficult a whitewater.
The Russian boats were through the Akim Breach. Now it was our turn, and I was in the first American raft to go through. Jib had given me the option of going on the raft or walking around. He also said there was a real chance of flipping. This would mean a swim in freezing water for more than 2 miles. I gulped 3 times, questioned my sanity, and said, okay, I'm going. At first, we didn't know how rough it would be. We soon found out it was wild. 15 to 20-foot waves, over one and right into another. It was like seeing a wall in front of you and then diving down the backside. We missed the eddy where the Russians stopped. We nearly flipped. I thought I was right out of the raft. Everyone was yelling. Each wave a new thrill. We just kept paddling. This was real teamwork for survival. With the rapids of the Akim Breach safely behind, the team trekked to a place they dubbed the Museum Camp. It was kind of a Mad Hatter's collection of creative artifacts left by passing river teams.
This is great.
Здесь собраны всякие поделки, которые туристы оставляют на память.
Portland, Oregon.
Project RAFT. Argut. Pekka Argut.
Moscow.
The place brought back special memories to Misha Kolshevnikov, Soviet master of sport, who has been here many times before.
Причаливать, трудно управлять.
Misha, it seems as though a lot of friendship is developing between your group of Soviet rafters and the rafters from the United States. How do you feel about this whole venture?
Я думаю, что самое большое значение.
I think the greatest thing about this joint trip is the people from 2 independent cultures met here, and I think that this mutual interchange of thoughts, of ideas, makes us richer. We overcome different obstacles here together, and when dealing with each other, we understand each other better. Our task here is not only to run the river, but also to overcome the wall existing between our 2 nations.
By opening up their rivers to river running, the Russians have made a significant step forward in opening up their people, their culture, to tourism. Because as we go down this river, we're visiting villages, we're meeting other river runners, and it's an intimate and open situation that they've allowed us to descend into. And it's really quite exciting to be part of it.
The faces of the people bore the stamp of their Mongolian ancestry. There's always something about children everywhere, isn't there? Something that really tugs at your heart. Miles away from the shearing, Jim Fowler visited a place of unusual commerce in his overland journey.
This was a farm with a very unusual crop, reindeer. They raise them primarily for their antlers, which they sell to Japanese and other Asians for use as a tonic. I rode with these Siberian cowboys as they cut out a reindeer from the herd and chased it into a holding pen. The antlers are a renewable resource. It takes only a year for a new rack to grow in.
And they 80-67.
And they wrap it around the antler and lash it to the side so you can't move it off. They're cut in summer. No machines, just a hacksaw and some muscle.
It doesn't really hurt the animal that much, but there will be a little bit of blood.
Even though there is a little blood, the animal feels no pain. Medicinal powder cleanses the cut and keeps it free from infection.
Okay. Here he comes. Get ready. Ready for the next one.
The going price for antlers? $400 a pound, I was told, which brings in a total revenue of about $1 million a year to the collective farm.
What Misha recommends is that our basic strategy is that we stay upright in the first section of this rapid. And how we're going to do that is stay off the right side. You can see there's a number of holes down the right. The only problem is if we're over here on the left, as the river begins to bend back around, there's a big hole. And so what he recommends is that we set up safety with a catamaran and a kayak, at least one kayak, down to that eddy there, just where we can see, and hopefully everything will be fine. So that's what Misha recommends. That's what we're going to do. So let's go get it. Come on, let's go.
Once again, the kayaks headed down first to form the safety net. By now, with 4 days of white water behind them, the team had learned to respect the Katun. But the river was still in full flood and not to be taken for granted, as this Soviet catamaran was about to find out. The American kayakers shot out to the rescue, but they weren't needed. Luckily, the two Soviets, Genya and Alyosha, climbed on top to ride out the rest of the rapid. The water was extremely cold, around 40 degrees. And even though everyone wore special dry suits, if you had to swim for more than a few minutes, you could be in big trouble. The need for cooperation between the team members became clear to everyone after the catamaran flipped. At this point, mutual trust was critical. Not only of each other's river skills, but of each other as people.
During this trip, I understood that the Americans are the same people as we are, and that they also understand friendship and comradeship, and they feel responsibility for each other. And it's pleasant for me to work with such people.
Then came a stretch of relative calm and the chance to take in the scenery, a part of the Soviet Union previously hidden from Western eyes. No roads here, just a cold river and a handful of adventurers. At the end of their first week together, there was a sense that the team had been transformed by their experience on the Katun. The labels Soviet and American weren't nearly as important now. Just men and women on a river. Glenna wrote a song expressing something that I think all of us felt.
Starts with the friendships we have all formed together. Time spent drifting towards the sea. And we all know the joy of the movement of the water.
Then Igor, the Soviet interpreter, surprised us with a familiar tune.
John Brown's body lies a mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a mouldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. But his soul goes marching on.
By now, the rafters mixed freely on the boats, and as they grew together, the preconceptions they had of each other faded away.
When the opportunity came to travel to the Soviet Union, I hopped on it immediately just because not only did I want to run rivers here, I wanted to see what it was like. I'd heard all my life what the Soviet Union was like, and then you hear so much of its propaganda. And I think probably is how much like Americans the Soviets are.
The Soviets didn't think much of American peanut butter, but they did like the idea of kayaking. Earl taught Xenia to do a roll, and he turned out to be a natural.
Okay. Good job, Canja! Yeah! Yay! Woo! Yay!
Away from the rafters, I visited a canyon cliff covered with petroglyphs, or rock etchings.
See 'em a little better? Yeah. Let me try it this way. Ready? Ah, yeah. They come much clearer now. Yeah. Fantastic. Look at that. Ah, this one seems to be a hunter, and it looks like he has a weapon. And the rest seem to be ibex.
They said that a long time ago there was a river here. You see all these rocks above, they are washed with water. And then the river came
No
down.
one knew for sure how old the drawings were.
It was the maidens.
I also met a team of Soviet archaeologists. They were excavating a Mongol warrior who had been buried with his horse 600 years ago. At that time, these warriors were part of an empire that controlled trade along the Silk Road from China to the Mediterranean. we were less than 200 miles from the Mongolian border. The archaeologists also told me these particular Mongols may have been a race of very tall people. All the skeletons were over 6 feet long.
In the river camp, the menu was getting a little thin. As a last resort, there was always breakfast, Soviet style.
No, not caviar again.
Two things we never ran out of were caveat and Russian sayings. Splav in Russian means rafting, but it's also an acronym for Joint Trips Are the Best Alternative to War.
The Soviet river guides that were with us told us that the river was at the highest level it had been in 5 years. And as we went along, we saw trees that had been ripped out at their roots floating downstream and lots of debris going through the rapids. And it was really pretty scary to see the force of the river in that way.
Now it was time for the paddle boat to take a shot, with Soviets and Americans aboard. The kayaks waited on the shore, ready in case a rescue was needed. The yellow paddle boat had radioed ahead. They were thinking of taking a direct line straight through the center of the biggest rapids. It was a bold move. They considered again, and then they made the decision to go for it. Everyone was digging their paddles deep, going for maximum power to punch the waves. The water was so cold you had an ice cream headache the second you went in. Even with special dry suits, you could only last a few minutes.
It's always a really frightening feeling to look upstream and see some people swimming in the river coming downstream, especially from the kayaker's point of view. You're sitting right on the water level. You see them there one moment, they're gone the next. It's the worst place in the world for someone to be is in the middle of a rapid swimming. You're always better off if you're on top of your boat or in the boat, but swimming is really bad. So the first thing you want to do is try to help that person get over to shore. And it can be very difficult in a big pounding rapid that's moving along, and a lot of times the people are just at the mercy of the flow of the rapid. And the best thing you can do, though, is try to get them on the stern of your boat and pull them over to the side, get them out of the water as quickly as you can.
Fortunately, it was only a few hundred more yards downstream and the rapids eased off. Everybody was safe.
It was exciting from the time we entered. It was big up at the top. We were just, you know, just going for it and just paddling hard, and looked like everything was working well. And we got down here, and I don't know where we were, but next thing you know, I see Mike coming over to my side, big wave building up on me, and then all of a sudden I'm underwater. When I'm floating along, I'm looking downstream, and I thought I saw a ledge hole coming up, so I'm swimming back out in the middle of the current. Anyway, it was nice seeing the kayaks down below. The thing is that the big part of the wave wasn't what nailed us, from what I understand. I think it was the left lateral coming off the back part of the wave is what got us.
Yeah, I was a little concerned because after the flip occurred, I looked quickly around and I saw Igor, I saw Sasha, I saw Donnie, but I didn't see Volodya. And he was underneath the boat, relaxing, enjoying himself, breathing air. And then after a little while, he came up on the side and we pulled him in. I think everybody reacted properly. Given the situation, it's just, the river is just so big right now that it's making the decisions in these rapids.
Most totally awesome. Misha said it all. Totally awesome. The Katun River part of the expedition was over now, and a big Soviet helicopter arrived to ferry the team and their equipment to the Chulyshman River. Because of the unusually high spring runoff, the Katun had been surprisingly difficult. Now the team was wondering what they were in for on the Chulyshman. Located 175 miles to the northeast of the Katun, the Chulyshman was a steeper and more technically difficult river. After the 1-hour chopper flight, they unloaded their gear, 3,000 pounds worth, cut by half from the amount of equipment they brought with them at the start of the expedition. As they portaged the gear to a put-in point, they could see the first section of the Chulyshman. It didn't look that bad. Optimism was growing. Even the Soviets said it looked better than they had expected. But the canyon narrowed, and the river suddenly got very steep and out of control. The team decided to go down one boat at a time. The first oar boat had 2 extra paddlers in the front for additional power. Even then, it took all their strength to reach the safety of the shoreline eddy. Then things went crazy. Everything broke loose. With 2 people from the camera crew on board, Dan Grant's raft had flipped. Dan had grabbed the boat as it went over and managed to pull himself on top. He desperately signaled that there were still others in the water. This was serious. The rapids didn't let up for miles, and if the kayaks failed to catch the swimmers, they might not make it. Kayaker Kevin Padden had a small movie camera strapped to his helmet, and as he paddled out to try and save the 2 swimmers, his camera recorded the action. Finally, everybody was safe. The next day, a helicopter combed the river looking for the raft. There was concern because everybody's passport and airline tickets were in a waterproof bag tied in the raft. The chopper searched the gorge and finally, 20 miles downriver, found the raft pinned under a log. The bag was recovered, but the rowing frame looked like a pretzel. It was definitely time for a meeting.
Try to find the raft.
И параллельно перемещаться
I was very fortunate to hold on to the raft and be on top of it. And hopefully in a flip, we're able to do that. Everyone can stay with the raft. And if someone becomes separated from the raft, that could mean very serious injury, if not death.
So Dan just took this, monumental swim on top of a flipped raft. And I'm concerned, Misha, that if this is the easy section, and Dan says that there were some very, very big holes, that the more difficult section may be just completely unrunnable.
And so the decision was made. Carry the gear up what the rafters dubbed the hill from hell, and get a helicopter to help them move past the most hazardous rapids. After completing their portage, the team found a tributary river that started at the foot of a fabulous waterfall. As far as anyone knew, they were the first Westerners to see it. They couldn't pass it up. The tributary was called the Chulcha. It was a natural test for kayakers. The Soviets gave it their most difficult rating, Class 7, and told the Americans no one had ever run it. Earl Alderson was about to find out why. Now it was Jib Ellison's turn. The Chulcha was on the edge of what a raft was capable of doing, but the Soviets wanted to give it a shot in their catamaran. Everyone was tested. As the end of the trip drew near, it was clear that Project RAFT was underway. Next summer, the Americans planned to host the Soviets on the Colorado River.
The main thing is just continuous. Really big, there's big holes, big waves, big rocks, big obstacles, things that can flip a boat very easily, or at least cause there to be swimmers from the boat. We've learned more about each other in these past 24 hours than in the entire, whatever it was, 10 days on the Katun. Russians and Americans are all in the same boat, and it provides a very important model of cooperation between our two countries.
The Soviets don't have all the material things that we have, and I think because of that, they value their friendships a lot more.
Even though we don't speak common languages, we did have a common goal of getting through the rapids right side up.
The people here are just so gentle and nice and really outgoing, outreaching, really wanting to be our friends.
The river expeditions allow us to work together. It's very important because we can see how each group of people lives.
And so it was all over. They had come together from opposite sides of the world, worked together, made friends together. And knowing each other as they did now, they knew that under the thin skin of cultural differences, all of us are more alike than we are different. And when you know that, you know you've taken the first real steps towards peace.
Earth is our mother, just turning around, with her trees in the forest and roots underground. Our Father above us, whose sigh is the wind, paint us a rainbow without any end. As the river runs freely, the mountain does rise. Let me touch with my fingers and see with my eyes. In the hearts of the children, a pure love still grows. Like a bright star in heaven that lights our way home, like the flower that shattered the stone. As the river runs freely, the mountain does rise. Let me touch with my fingers and see with my eyes. Like a bright star in heaven that lights our way home, like the flower that shattered the stone.
We're proud to announce that Mutual of Omaha's Spirit of Adventure was recently honored with a National Sports Emmy Award.